Okay, so I watched New York Times discussion about Toni Morrison this week, and it was a discussion that was had by Wesley Morris. I think he led it, and then there were two literary critics who also joined in a conversation. And the question that they were centering themselves around was, if Toni Morrison is worshipped, do we lose anything? Is there a danger in making her into a saint, like a literary saint? And if so, if she is made into kind of a literary saint, will it flatten her at all? And I personally believe it's a really good conversation or question to grapple with. And I was happy that they were having it. But I must say that I was bothered by the conversation. I was slightly kind of bothered, and I didn't quite know why when I watched it. So I rewatched it. And then I read the comments in the comments section. And as the days kind of rolled on and it was back in my mind, kind of percolating, because I'm a processor, you guys, I was like, okay, I think I know why, like, this conversation, the way in which it was had, kind of bothered me. So I want to talk about it. I want to get into it and share my thoughts. I want to hear what your thoughts are about it as well. So let's do just that. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. I'm Chantel, and here on Always Be Reading, we talk about all things books and book related. So if you have not yet done so yet, please hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a video, and hit the like button too, because it helps our little space in this YouTube world. It helps people find us. So yeah, let's just get right on into Toni, shall we? Let's get right on into this conversation about Toni Morrison that was had. This was not a bad conversation. I really did enjoy the conversation that these folks had. I was trying to find, I didn't write down their names of the other two folks that were on the panel. I was looking to see if I did, but I am linking the actual show in the comment section below, so you can definitely check that out. It was a respectful conversation. You can really tell that these three are Morrison lovers, and that they actually have read a wide, probably all of her work. They're very, very, very well saturated into her books, and also know a lot of facts about her life. So yeah, so I felt like that she was, it was a great people to be having this conversation. And so that was good. I have two main kind of critiques about the conversation, though, that I think didn't serve their intentions well. I think it was more distracting than it was actually helping people to wrestle with the question that they were posing to everyone. And so the first one that I want to talk about is just who was at the table. So again, there were three people that were having this conversation. One, Wesley Morris, who was the Black man, and then there were two other women who were non-Black. One was white, and then the other one, I'm not sure her background. She might be East Indian. I'm not really sure. And in the comment section below, the number one comment, or the comments that were the highest, was frustration and confusion, I would say, as to why a Black woman was not part of this discussion. And so where I do believe that Toni Morrison's work is art, so it's for everyone, it's literature, and definitely anyone can speak on it for sure, without a doubt. But I think for this particular conversation about her being worshipped, about what could be lost with that, just the type of conversation that they were trying to have and what they were trying to wrestle with, I think that it actually flattened something that they are concerned about in the conversation, her being flattened. I think that they flattened her in how they set up this conversation. I definitely think that having the perspective of a Black woman to be part of that panel discussion would have helped it to be really first anchored in that a Black woman could have anchored perspective and conversation in a very internal way, from an inside internal place. Toni Morrison wrote unapologetically about the Black experience, but for Black people. And most of her work was centered around Black women. And it's so vital. And there are some things that you just can't understand unless you are part of that, very unique, specific community. So not having a Black woman's voice represented in this type of discussion, I think harmed the conversation. I think it harmed the conversation. Number one, it harmed the conversation, I think, in just people being able to enter in. Automatically in the comments, some people were like, I can't even enter into this conversation because this perspective is missing and so vital. And I get that. But another way for me that it harmed the conversation is that you lost a vital perspective that's really important to this conversation specifically. And so I think that it would have, I wish they would have thought about that more. And I wish that they would have added another chair to that table, because I think that it would have made for really seeing Morrison and her work in a more dynamic and robust way. And that kind of leads me to my second critique about the conversation. And that is this aspect of spectacle. So, which I don't think was intentional, but I do think kind of could leave, it had left a taste in my mouth, at least, as spectacle. So one of the things that they did, each of the participants came with a quote. They came prepared to share a quote that, really moves them within her work. And they could pick, I think, across any body of her work, in any of the works. And all of their quotes, every single last one of them, was centered around brutality, violence, and pain. Some of the most violent scenes, including a rape scene that the person sharing couldn't even finish. That is what was shared. And I think in this way, again, they flattened Toni Morrison in a conversation that really was trying to say, hey, we don't want Toni Morrison flattened, right? We're afraid that if she's elevated or people are starting to look at her and worship her in this way, that she's going to be flattened and we're going to lose something. So in a very conversation that was trying to warn against her being flattened, again, they flattened her by sharing examples of her work that were just one type of example. And this isn't something that these three just did. This is something that's done a lot when it comes to Toni Morrison. Book talk, tube talk, literary articles. When people discuss Toni Morrison and they bring up examples of her work, it's always the most brutal, shocking, violent things. And that does not show the range and the fullness of Toni Morrison. Yes, those things are there. She writes about them, and she writes about them in such descriptive and honest and jarring ways. Absolutely. And she writes about them because she wants us to sit and be present with it, right? It's necessary. But she also writes about tenderness. She also writes about friendship. She also writes about joy and belly laughter. She also writes in a way that holds you and comforts you. She also makes you laugh. She has humor. Toni Morrison in her works is this whole huge range of human emotions and expressions. And that's part of her magnitude. That's the part when you're reading her work and you're sitting on the inside that just you're in awe of this wonderful range that she's able to tap into just as honestly and delicious and kind of like thought-provoking in a way that you not even thought-provoking, but body-provoking, that you feel it in your body. She does that. That's what she does. And so I was so disappointed that all of their quotes were centered in sameness. Different stories, different scenes, different characters, same types of trauma, same type of thing, violence and brutality. And in doing that, we're flattening her to spectacle. We're flattening her to spectacle. And we're missing a lot of Toni. So I really would have wished that they would have maybe coordinated. Hey, I'm sharing this quote. What are you sharing? That they would have made sure that they weren't coming with the one thing, the one thing. And maybe it's just because they didn't have like a pre-conversation. So I'm trying to give grace. But if they did, yeah. So I wanted to offer a quote in addition to that conversation, imagining myself as a member in that panel discussion. I was even thinking like, what quote would I have wanted to share from the work? And the quote that I would want to have shared if I was in that conversation actually comes from Beloved, and it is from the character Paul D. And he says, "She is a friend of mine. She gathers me, man. The pieces I am. She gathered them and she give them back to me in all the right order." I'm going to read that again because I want you to it's a short quote, but I want you to just feel it. Maybe close your eyes. I wish I had her deep, deep voice to read it in. I don't have her Morrison voice to read it in, but just imagine, come along with me. She is a friend of my mind. She gathered me, man. The pieces I am, she gathered them and she gave them back to me in all the right order. I just love that quote. That's Toni Morrison. Alongside the violence, alongside despair, alongside just unimaginable brutality, there's also this tenderness. There's also love. There's also vulnerability. There's also respect. There's also appreciation. There's holding, there's holding. He was held in that quote. And thus we were held in that quote. And I just wish that would have been offered or something like that too. And so I offer it to you. I offer it to you in this moment. I feel like it is an important question. And I do think that the only way to not flatten Toni Morrison or any artist really is to really spend time with the body of their work. Toni Morrison has a body of work. I have spent the last 3 months, not planned, just happened in my life. So glad it happened though. Reading 5 works. I started with Jazz, then Beloved, Paradise, Sula, Song of Solomon, and now I'm reading her short story with my girls. And reading her work, there's some that I like more than others. There's characters that frustrate and confuse me and I don't understand, but I'm reading her body of work. And I think that the most dangerous thing that can flatten or snuff out any writer or artist is if we don't actually read their work. So my thing isn't that we're not maybe loving too much, a Toni Morrison, who is a very revered and respected and and loved member of definitely of the African American community, and I dare say of the literary community as well. But my fear is that our love is lazy, that we're not actually reading. When you ask people if they know her, yes, they do. When you ask if they've read her, not a lot, not finished. And I think that there are lots of reasons, for that as well. For me, definitely there was. I didn't read a whole Toni Morrison until last year, which I've shared, on my channel and talking about her. And so I would say that the greatest thing that we can do is actually to read her work. I'm very encouraged, and I hope it continues and that it wasn't just a thing for Black History Month, that her, there's been a lot of engagement around her books, and I hope that is going to continue to happen. And I hope people read beyond Beloved and also check out her other books like the ones that I've mentioned, and Home and A Mercy. Just read her works and talk with someone about it. Grab a friend and say, hey, do you want to read this book with me? Hey, will you read this book with me? Put a date on the calendar. Take yourselves out to dinner or to whatever makes you happy, whatever's going to feel like a nice reward and a goal, and discuss the work, because there is so much that she has for Black people that's necessary and needed for us now and for people everywhere, like for humans, right? And it's so critical. Okay, that's enough of me being on my soapbox of like reading Toni Morrison's work, but I'm really serious about it. Again, I'm going to leave this conversation that the New York Times had about her in the show notes below. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts. If you feel the same way I felt about the quotes and the range, and also about who was at the table, if it would have made sense to you, if you think they would have had a better conversation by having that perspective of a Black woman at the table, or if you're like, no, it didn't matter at all. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. I'm so excited to continue this conversation. And I am working on something that I don't know when it's going to be finished, so I'm not pressuring myself, y'all. But I'm working on kind of like a guide now that I've read 5 works, and I am nowhere considering myself like a master of Morrison here at all. But I do have some thoughts as far as like where people should start if they have not read Morrison, or if it's like it's been a long time. And I'm actually kind of talking about it with some other people that are more steeped in Morrison than I am, to kind of put together like a Morrison guide, because now that people, since people know I've read her, I have a lot of people asking me like, oh, I'm interested in reading, but where should I start? So I want to put together like kind of like a where should I start guide of reading Toni Morrison, and I will be giving that information to you as soon as I kind of collect it and get it ready so that I can share with you. All right, you guys, well, I'm about to go. That's all. I just wanted to pop on here and share my thoughts about that conversation. Thank you for sticking around and for hanging out with me. If you haven't done so already, before you leave, hit that like so that you're like, oh, I'm gonna do it later. No, hit it right now. And also, if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss a video and that we can stay connected. Also, you guys, I'm on Substack. I'm really loving that space over there. So in that land, my little Substack playground, I write about all things literature and all things bookish, but I go into a lot more depth and analysis. So if you are into that thing, then you can join my Substack. I would love to have you over there. And until next time, you guys, you know what to do. Stay safe, stay sane, and as always, stay reading. Bye.